Hi, everybody. This is Jay Moore with The Ordinary Christian. I hope you're all doing well. I pray that you are living a powerful, missional life where the light of Christ is shining brightly through you and into your part of this dark world. I pray for that. I am asking God to raise up, train up, and unleash an army of ordinary Christians, an army of everyday garden variety followers of Christ who are committed to living a missionary lifestyle in their part of this dark world where His light is shining brightly and people can come to faith in Christ. As I talk to people, I'm finding more and more people that that's their heart's desire, that they truly want to live that kind of life, but in many cases they're just not sure how to go about that. And so today I just want to talk with you, give you a little bit of a tip, a little instruction on a way how you can start spiritual conversations with total strangers. Now, I want to repeat that. How do you start a spiritual conversation with total strangers? Now, you're going to have to do this at some point because there's going to come a time in your life, in your Christian life, in your Christian walk, where you're going to probably run out of family, friends, neighbors, acquaintances, fellow workers to share Jesus with, because you're probably going to share with them all. They're either going to come to faith in Christ or they're going to reject Christ and not really want to hang around with you anymore. So what do you do when you finally run out of hot prospects, that you know, that sphere of influence that you have, and they're no longer there to, there's no more available for you to share with about Jesus? Well, you're going to have to learn how to see where God is at work, find strangers, and share with them about Christ. But how do you start a spiritual conversation with total strangers? I mean, that's a little intimidating. I mean, do you just come up to him and says, "Can I tell you about Jesus?" Well, probably would freak them out, not be real good. But are there some natural ways, easy ways, that you can start a spiritual conversation to start engaging people and talking with them about the love of God, about Christ, about forgiveness of sin? Well, there is. As a matter of fact, the Bible gives us wonderful examples. I got to tell you, I think Jesus was a master at starting spiritual conversations with total strangers. He was a natural at it. He had it down packed. And if we just study the life of Christ, we're going to see and find ways that, he used to start spiritual conversations with people. One case in point, an example for you. How about when Jesus spoke to the woman at the well and led her to faith? And not only her, but her entire city, town, village came to faith in Christ. And matter of fact, they actually said, "We now believe, not because you told us, but because we have seen for ourselves." Well, what did Jesus do in order to create this powerful movement of God in that community where the whole community comes to faith in Christ? Well, it all started with his encounter with one woman at a well. That's right, one woman at a well, who he started a spiritual conversation with, who then came to faith in Christ, came to faith in him as the Messiah, and then went and told all of the townspeople about it. They came and met him, and they too came to faith in Christ. But let's take a look, or just a really quick look. Because here's Jesus. He's come to the well, and he's told his disciples to go into town to get some food, and he was going to wait there because he was just dead dog tired. He had been walking, he had been ministering, and he was just wasted. I mean, not wasted like with drugs, but I mean, he was just exhausted. Exhausted. And so he's sitting there, and he begins to see this woman walking to this well to get some water. Now, it's at a time of day when most women wouldn't come out to get any water because it was the heat of the day, and usually the only women who would come out at that time were probably women who were excluded from the community socially, and she's trying to avoid any criticism. And so Jesus sees her coming out, and I think he's probably thinking to himself, "Well, I wonder if God the Father is at work in her life. We need to find out." So she's a total stranger. She's never met him before. She comes up, she starts getting water from the well, and Jesus asks her a question. The question is, "Could you get me some water?" She responds back and says, "Why are you, a Jewish man, asking me, a Samaritan woman, to get you water?" I mean, what Jesus was doing was basically uh, unheard of. It was socially unacceptable for two reasons. One is, back in those times, a man would not talk to a woman who was not his wife or his daughter. It just really wasn't kosher, acceptable practice. But the second thing is, he was Jewish, she was a Samaritan, and socially, these two groups of people really didn't get along very well. There was some animosity, there was some bigotry that was going on. And so Jesus was breaking all of the social norms of his day by engaging her with a question. It's a simple question. Could you get me some water? And I think he's looking to see, does she respond or does she ignore him? Because if she's going to follow the social norms, she's going to ignore him. Because one, she's a woman, he's a man. Two, she's a Samaritan and he's Jewish. But she doesn't. She actually says, "Why are you asking me, a Samaritan woman, you being a Jewish man, for water?" All of a sudden, he begins to talk with her. And he says, "Well, if you knew who it was that was asking you for a cup of water, you would ask him for some water, and he would have given you living water where you'd never thirst again." Immediately, they're into a spiritual conversation. And he begins to lead it from there and take it from there, which results in her salvation and results in the salvation of the entire community from which she's at. Now, how do you apply that to our situation? Well, it's like fishing. Jesus was a good fisherman. And he actually told Peter, James, and John, and also Andrew, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Jesus was going to teach them how to fish for something else. Now, fishermen know, at least today, when you're fishing with a rod and a reel, that you're going to have a hook to hook that fish, and you're going to put bait on there, and you're possibly going to have a lure that's on that. Now, the purpose of the lure is to allure the fish to the bait. And when they get close to the bait and they see the bait, they may begin to nibble at it, and then you hook them. Well, we want to use the same thing. We want to learn when we are trying to initiate a spiritual conversation with a stranger, we need to have a lure that allures them in, that catches them by surprise, that begins to grab their attention and draw them in. It's going to do one of two things. It's either going to draw them in or it's not. If they draw in, then you begin to have the spiritual conversation. You have the opportunity for a spiritual conversation. If it doesn't draw them in and they stay at a distance, well, guess what? That's not one of the ones that God is at work with. And so you don't have this opportunity for the spiritual conversation. So here is the lure, one of the lures that I like to use when engaging a stranger and seeing if I can have the potential for a spiritual conversation. Let's say I am at a Starbucks coffee shop, okay? And I go up to the counter. What do you think is the first thing that barista is going to ask me? Well, obviously she's going to ask me, "What can I do for you? What kind of coffee would you like?" But inevitably, most people say, "Well, how are you doing today?" I mean, that is just a typical, way to talk. Now, chances are they really don't care how I'm doing today. Maybe on that rare occasion you'll find somebody who does. But they're going to ask. Most times they're going to ask, "How are you doing today?" And I like to share with them, especially if it's somebody I've never met before, and I want to see if I can have at least some kind of a spiritual conversation with them, or at least plant a spiritual seed in their mind. I'll look at them and I will say, "Well, you know what? I'm doing better than I deserve. But because I'm doing better than I deserve, I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty happy about it." And they're going to look at me either. I've had people look at me surprised, and they say, "Oh no, I think you deserve all the best things in the world." And if they say that, then I come back and I respond. I said, "Well, you know what? No, that's not true, because if I got what I deserve, it would be a really hot day in hell, because I deserve to go to hell. But it's only because of God's grace and what Jesus has done for me that I know that all my sins are forgiven. And for that, it makes it a really great day." And then I begin to have, the spiritual conversation has already started. and I talk with them about it. Now, if I say that and they don't respond and say, oh, that's cool, and they just keep on doing what they're doing, guess what? I don't have a spiritual conversation. Now, granted, if it's with a cashier at a Starbucks or at a grocery store, it's not going to be much of a spiritual conversation. It may be just planting a little seed there. But I can use that same thing if I'm sitting down with somebody at the Starbucks, another customer, and we're having, at the same table or we're sitting at the same chair and we're talking, just begin a conversation. And I throw that out there, and all of a sudden I have maybe now the opportunity to carry on a more lengthier conversation with people. And it gives me an opportunity to share my story of how I came to faith in Christ. It gives me an opportunity to share Christ's story of how he died on the cross for my sins and their sins, and how he was in the tomb for 3 days, but on the third day rose from the grave, which gave him power, proved that he had power over sin, over grave, over death. And now has the authority to offer to anyone who's willing to receive a free gift of their sins being completely forgiven, if they would receive it by surrendering their life over to his lordship. So if you're out there and you're wondering how to start a spiritual conversation, this is just one little lure. Somebody asks you, how you doing today? Just simply respond, better than I deserve. Because if I got what I would deserve, it would be a really hot day in hell. And then just get quiet and see how they respond. If they are drawn into it and they ask you more about it or question you more about it, start the spiritual conversation with them. If they kind of ignore it, blow it off, and say, I guess God's not at work, and go about your day. Look for another fish. All right, I hope this helps. And we're going to come up with some other, allures that we can use to initiate spiritual conversations with strangers. I hope to have a few of those in there so you can put those in your quiver, draw them out as you need to, and begin to share about Jesus as you live that missional life. Take care. God bless you. Oh, and by the way, if you're here and you haven't already signed up, I want to encourage you to do something. I want you to do something right here, right now. I want you to take a few moments, and I want you to sign up for a free weekly missional devotional that I put out to encourage God's people to live an intentional missional life where the light of Christ shines brightly through them and into their part of this dark world. We find out that there's a lot of people out there who are truly wanting to live missional life, but it's discouraging at times, and we need to have somebody come alongside us and encourage us. And I send out to hundreds of people every week in the United States and around the world these missional devotionals to encourage them. I want to offer it to you as well. They're free. You have nothing to it. There's a link right below where you can say subscribe here, free missional devotionals. Hit that link, fill out, give us your name, give us your email address, and send it in, and you'll start receiving those free missional devotionals. Here's my promise to you. Your email address I will never give away. I will never sell to anyone, to any group, for any reason. It is secure with me. So take a few moments right here, right now, fill it out, send it in, start receiving your free devotionals. Take care. God bless you.